What's up, dudes? Max here. So it has happened. A big thanks to Capcom. A little while ago, we had the opportunity to go to a small preview event for Resident Evil Requiem. And with that preview event, there was a lot of questions. Is it going to be the same stuff we've kind of seen before? Now that Leon is revealed, are we going to be playing and seeing Leon stuff? And the answer is, yeah, we actually did. So I'm going to go over some of my base impressions and kind of like what happened in this demo, how I'm feeling about the game, but I think that's a good place to start, which is how I've been feeling about Requiem in general. The initial gameplay experience that a lot of us had, if you had a chance to play this, was with the Grace demo, with the large, like, creature that's sort of following you around when you first show up in this sort of like laboratory, office / hospital. That sequence is like no gun, no combat, like very little, and just meandering, moving around. It kind of feels like you're playing Alien Isolation. I always thought the quality of that was really good, but it did feel like there's more. Like, we always kind of had like an inkling, whether or not we thought that Leon was going to be in the game, legit or not, that the game was like hiding something, that specifically there's some stuff in the background that we do not know. The entire game is not going to be this Alien Isolation like, or is it, you know? So those questions were sort of there. It was my hope that it wasn't. I wanted to engage with this like, you know, similar to a traditional Resident Evil game, or something like an RE4 game, which is, you know, a Leon action game. So with that all being said, what we played picks up right after the sequence that we've all mostly seen of that demo where Grace is meandering around and trying to move away from this creature. It pretty much is Leon showing up and, my dude, without breaking down the specifics, it gets insane and it turns into a mile a minute almost instantly.
Code 6, all staff initiate emergency protocols.
I think I want a second opinion.
What I kind of loved about this was that I was expecting Leon to sort of walk around kind of slowly like Grace would, and suddenly I'm just chainsaw wielding, head popping, you know, gun kata shooting zombies in the back of the head, the likes of which I have never seen since like pretty much traditional Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 4 Remake. It was genuinely a massive contrast in terms of what the original Grace demo and promotional stuff was providing. And I was pretty shocked by what was immediately happening. Really cool things like contextual kills on zombies in environments. There's a lot of that. Really cool moments where the parry that works similar to RE4 Remake has some unique situations that happen. He gets an axe now instead of a small knife, and there's some different things that take place when you get close range to zombies. And I was just like bewildered by the action and how it feels. It does feel genuinely really good, but it does feel a bit closer to, I would say, like a Resident Evil 4 remake than the other action games like RE5 or RE6. So after this massive action sequence, Leon and Grace meet each other and they separate, which begins the next big part of the gameplay that we were all hoping, and it's that Resident Evil 9 is going to be a game that is kind of like a split personality. It's two different games. So you begin playing a Grace section, and as you play the Grace section, it very much plays out like an RPD in classic Resident Evil fashion, like a Baker house in Resident Evil 7, and especially the old school mansion in Resident Evil 1. And as I was going through this, I was like, okay, like the contrast is massive. Like Grace is like slow. She has almost no weapons. She gets like one bullet for one thing, like an emergency shot. Then you have to find your resources. You have to find everything. It is pretty much tried and true classic Resident Evil, the likes of which we had not really seen too much of since, like I was saying, the Bakers with Resident Evil 7. However, as I was going through this, you start noticing the personalities of the zombies, and all the creatures that you start running into almost have like hyper personalities, and it's because they tie the zombies much closer, like they just turned, you know, like it happened moments ago. So everyone is still sort of stuck in like a human mindset where they're fulfilling tasks and doing the things that they were doing. They're still doing their job. And every single room that you go into is kind of like a fun house of weird zombie shit. And I don't mean like literal shit. I mean like crazy zombie stuff that's happening. To the point of which I was like, this is really cool. Like I would argue, without spoiling too much of what happens in every single room, as I was going through each one, you kind of have to solve them like puzzles, avoiding zombies, avoiding contact, like getting little extra items and knickknacks here and there. Every single time I progressed from one room to the next, I was sort of met with this new thing. And this was just like the West Wing. There's an entire East Wing and like an upper floor and a lower floor. There's the map kind of grew out a ton, to the point where as this was expanding, I was like, this is pretty good. And I even got to a point where I went through a whole bunch of stuff, acquired things, got keys, was able to open up new areas, classic Resident Evil stuff, you know? When that happened and I had to start revisiting some areas, which is the way the old school formula goes, the really neat thing is that as I went through and started revisiting some of the same stuff I did before, things were different. Whether or not the monsters that I had killed on the way there was something different that happened to them, or they were acting differently as I was going through my second pass, you know what I mean? So I really appreciated that. I was trying to like, oh, I have a game plan. Here's all this stuff that I got. Now I gotta get this key to go to there. I got this to open up these drawers, like yada, yada, yada. Classic RE stuff. But this time, the game plan was thrown asunder because I couldn't just go do that. Something had changed, which I thought was a really, really captivating gameplay mechanic. So much so that the Grace section, because it's a bit slower, was like 3 hours, and I didn't entirely finish it within the time frame that we had. And I just was having a wonderful time. Just an absolute great time. I really don't want to spoil some of the moments that happen in there, but there's some crazy like shocks and gags and things that made me like audibly laugh out loud. I truly felt like it was a funhouse, like a Resident Evil funhouse of zombie wildness. And as she's going through and experiencing all this stuff, it's like, I legit feel that this is some of the best classic RE formula since RE7, and I think it's honestly better than the Baker House in Resident Evil 7. I think it's even better. However, it's just like one part of the game. As we were exploring it and realizing like, oh, I've kind of explored a lot of this. This section of the game is sort of like insular. It belongs to this asylum hospital thing that is the beginning of the game. So wherever this expands, like this sequence is likely over, because what happens after this, you start playing as Leon. And now Leon is charged with revisiting a similar situation where he has to go through the asylum, where you're immediately given a boss fight. Like all the big crazy action stuff is sort of like dumped on Leon, when a few of those moments were things that I was doing with Grace. This is where the game got me, when I was really enjoying the Grace section, but it's all about tenseness and pressure and item management and boxes, like literal classic Resident Evil typewriters and, you know, item cases and all that kind of stuff. It's the classic Resident Evil stuff all over the place. But as soon as I got to Leon and I killed a boss and I got my stuff back, and it's like, all right, where am I? And you drop in and it's like, oh, I'm in the same place that I was with Grace. And here comes like the similar enemies that had been giving me an extremely tough time as the previous character, and now I'm Leon, and it's just balls out, dude. Like these guys are getting ripped up, like just going after all of these monsters that were giving me such big troubles before. You would think that that was the moment that was like the extreme like contrast of these gameplay styles, where it's like, whoa, the catharsis is crazy. Yeah, I was getting a bit of it. But you know what the big one was? When I started running around as Leon and like gathering some of the things that I just couldn't gather with Grace because of limited inventory. And I would just run around and start yoinking all this stuff, like yoink, 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 yoink. And then I realized, oh, dude, I'm gonna run out of space. Oh, God. And then I looked at my inventory. Attaché case, massive inventory, all this space, all these guns. I have shotguns, I have this, I have that. I was like, whoa, dude. It hit me hard after playing the Grace section for several hours that suddenly I'm Action Man, and I was like thinking of like, who are all the bastards that gave me problems? Wait a minute, where were all the things that I could not do as Grace that I could do as Leon? A lot of that stuff opens up as him. It definitely led me to like a big like, wow, that catharsis feels nuts. And now I'm actually tackling these creatures and fighting them. I definitely felt the gameplay design philosophy behind Requiem. You really didn't know if this was gonna work out, But the relationship this sort of like dual game thing has, this split personality gameplay that the entire game seemingly is going to be, I will say in this first sequence, in this first section, was very much felt. So much to the point where it's like a lot of the Capcom guys are like curious what I think about it. And I had a lot of questions and concerns about the initial Requiem demo, even though I thought it was really exciting and Alien Isolation-like and all that kind of stuff with Grace. I was kind of like, it feels like there's more. Like, it feels like things are being specifically held back. This sequence feels like this is what the game is supposed to be. And so much so that I was like, in terms of like mainline Resident Evils, my impression, based on what I played, was this is probably my favorite Resident Evil since Resident Evil 4. Like, no kidding. To have like kind of the best of both worlds of classic, like meandering, walking around slow and spooky RE, to this big catharsis Leon stuff where you get actually crazy Leon action gameplay was very much felt. I loved it. I absolutely adored it. Now, here's the thing. All the glazing aside, I'm very much more looking forward to this game than I was before. Like, now, playing the full breadth, I'm very much looking forward to it. However, I can be observant of the situation. I felt a very similar way about another game, and that was Resident Evil 3 Remake. When we all played the game, when we all played the early versions of that game, it's like an action set piece, and then they put you in the city, right? They put you in Raccoon City as Nemesis is hunting you down, and you kind of have that pursuer gameplay. So yeah, RE3 Remake at the beginning I thought was really good. I'm like, this game's great, but then it quickly drops that and turns into something almost entirely different once you get out of that sequence of gameplay. So I just didn't vibe with the rest of the game at all. It just didn't, it felt like on rails and not nearly as fun, and I wanted more of what the beginning of that game was. So I am not outside of the realization that, yeah, what we're seeing in Resident Evil Requiem in RE9 is kind of the first area of the game, the first expansive, like, what we could call it a level almost. You know, similar how to RPD in Resident Evil 2 Remake or RE2 is like the first chunk of Resident Evil 2, like the first like kind of like third to half of the game, and it moves out of that to other areas beyond that. Like it expands beyond the RPD like a little bit later. I am not surprised if it is that, because even this isn't in Raccoon City. I don't think it is, man. This is clearly going to move to something that is like bigger in scale or some other places. And that's what I'm honestly like concerned about, if it's going to hit the same levels as this, because this hits really good. And if the rest of the game is going to do it for me as much as this. If it does, I think we have a Resident Evil all-timer, straight up. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days, dude. Like, I was waiting for them to send us this B-roll footage that you're looking at right now. I was just waiting for the moment to kind of re-experience this stuff again, because I legit had a wonderful time. There's a couple other things that I can probably throw in here that I don't think that I'm not allowed to say. The cool stuff that does take place, because Grace gets unique things that she can do with the environment. She gets to collect blood from certain zombies, and then you analyze the blood in certain labs, and you're able to get upgrade equipment, like either permanent upgrades for the character or like bullets or healing, you know, things like that. And all that really does is incentivize Grace to not just avoid zombies. If she does kill them and collect the blood, you can get upgrades. You can actually make your character better. So instead of just leaving it to the Leon part of him to blasting the zombies, Leon, I don't think, could collect the blood resource from zombies. He's just about making blood, a lot of it. So that being said, I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm like, this is a cool dynamic. I really like this. And it was having me like go out of my way and collect things. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm running out of time, because the Grace sections were genuinely fun. However, there is like, you know, emergency weapons in old school RE, like RE1, knives and things that you can stab a monster. They have that in this game, and there's like backup emergency weapons that kind of like stick into a zombie's neck and they explode. They turn into sinew, my dude.
That's too effective.
But you can also do that to downed zombies. Very similar to the lighter in the RE1 remake. And why the hell do you need to use a lighter and like behead certain zombies and creatures in RE1 Remake? Well, that's because over a certain period of time, they come back as more powerful creatures. And that shit happens in Requiem. It starts happening in the Grace section, where zombies come back with like different heads and things like that, and they literally are Crimson Head-like. I was like, whoa! So now, revisiting certain areas, the escalation gets even bigger, that if you didn't take care of this, oh dude, you had to take care of it, now they're coming back, dude. Like, I was like, wow, this is actually the best of the classic Resident Evil, you know, formula that I've played in a very long time. So anyway, I'm trying to think of more stuff as I'm giving these impressions, because I've been sitting on it for about like a few days now. But anyway, very good impressions. I can't wait to play through it on the channel. I'm going to be streaming it here on YouTube. I'm going to be putting up 4K videos when it eventually goes up, streaming it on Twitch as well. I am very much looking forward to if there's going to be a demo of the game. That probably should be happening soon-ish. I don't know if it's going to be nearly as big as what they showed with what we had, but all the Resident Evil games have a demo, so I wouldn't be surprised if there is one. Either way, very positive first impression. I went from being like, yeah, it's a new Resident Evil game, of course I'm going to play it, to now this is probably one of my most anticipated games, straight up. Leon is so cool in this game. It is ridiculous, dude. His one-liners, everything about him, like to the super spooky stuff that's happening with Grace, to like almost like light-hearted just wail on these zombies and talk shit to them. Like, man, I very much like this dual gameplay relationship. Either way, leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. I'll be back with more Resident Evil 9 Requiem stuff as soon as we learn more. My name is Max, and I'll see you dudes next time.